What's up, Guardians? Profane here. Thanks for checking out the video. Today we'll be checking out my first Hunter build since the release of Final Shape. If you've kept up with the channel, we've focused pretty heavily on Warlock and Titan builds so far. But now we dip our toes into the Hunter class, where we have a powerful new build that will go great with that new exotic auto rifle, the Choir of One. So if you just got the Choir of One, but you're in need of a cohesive build that's going to synergize with this amazing new exotic auto rifle, or maybe you're in need of a strong build to go with a number of other powerful void exotics, like the Graviton Lance or Luminarch, well, you've come to the right place, because this build is absolutely perfect. Today's build features the Foetracer exotic helmet, getting used with the Night Stalker Void subclass. I find this to be a much more cohesive build to use with a Choir of One, and a build that offers much more range in terms of survivability. But even with that being the case, we will be covering a prismatic version of this build, one that can be used with the new exotic class item that features the spirit of the Foetracer, or with the actual exotic itself. Even though we'll be getting the added benefits of perks like Transcendency and Radiance when using Prismatic, I find the Void version of this build to perform at a higher level, because we'll be able to have Devour active, which will give us a continuous source of health regeneration and bonus grenade energy. The Foetracer provides the perfect complement to the Choir of One, as it provides a ×4 weapon surge after striking a high-ranking enemy with any matching ability. So whenever we use any of our Void abilities on high-ranking enemies, like champions, mini-bosses, tormentors, and bosses, our Void weapons will receive a 25% increase in damage, giving the Choir of One and any other Void weapon a massive advantage in terms of damage against those bigger, beefier enemies. This damage bonus will not stack on top of weapon surges, but it will be increased by activity modifiers. And there's a lot of things that we'll be able to do through our class tree and artifact to increase that overall damage significantly. When using the actual exotic, those enemies will also become highlighted, and whenever they're defeated, they'll drop a Void Breach, which would give us 12.5% bonus class ability energy, helping us perform any of our dodges much more often, but this benefit will not carry over whenever using an exotic class item. Let's go ahead and check out how we'll be using our Night Stalker subclass to improve the performance of the Choir of One and any other Void weapon. When it comes to our choice in super, we are going with the Deadfall Tether, which is going to pull all nearby enemies into this tether anchor, causing them to become suppressed and weakened by 30%. We are using the Expanding Abyss artifact mod, so any weakening effects that we cause against enemies will be increased when using Void abilities and weapons. This will bring the weakening effects from Tether up to 35%, and any other weakening effects that we cause will be increased to 25%. Since we're also using the Void Hegemony artifact mod, we'll gain a Void Overshield whenever we defeat those weakened enemies, something we should be able to trigger pretty often. As far as aspects go, we are using Stylish Executioner and Trapper's Ambush. Stylish Executioner will give us invisibility after defeating a weakened, suppressed, or volatile enemy. When this happens, we'll gain True Sight, which lets us identify targets even if they're hiding behind barriers. This will also cause our next melee attack to apply weakening if done while invisible. With Trapper's Ambush, we'll be able to activate our melee energy while we're in the air, causing us to slam down to the ground, creating a cloud of smoke, which will weaken enemies. This is great to use against aggressive enemies, but we can still throw our Snare Bomb to weaken enemies from a distance. When it comes to our choice in fragments, we're going with Echo of Starvation, which grants us with Devour whenever collecting an orb or a Void Breach. And that's a really big difference maker, because it's going to drastically improve our survivability. Whenever Devour is active, every final blow will fully restore our health bar, and based on the enemy's difficulty level, we'll gain bonus grenade energy. This will range between 8 and 20% bonus energy, which will help us have our Vortex grenades much more often. And since we're using the Echo of Undermining, our grenades are going to cause targets to become weakened, which in turn will trigger Stylish Executioner. We've also got Echo of Instability, so whenever we defeat enemies with a grenade, we'll trigger volatile rounds on all of our Void weapons, giving the Choir of One and any other Void weapon the ability to pierce barrier champion shields. Volatile enemies cause Void explosions as they take additional damage, so this will help us inflict a lot more overall damage. With the use of Echo of Persistence, whenever we have Devour, Avoid Overshield, or Invisibility active, those effects will last longer, giving us a 40% increase to the duration of Invisibility and a 50% increase to the duration of Devour and Void Overshields. This will not only help us on a survivability front, but with Devour staying active longer, we'll be able to generate more grenade energy so that we can have volatile rounds more often and cause more weakening effects, allowing us to deal a lot more damage with Acquire of 1. And with all of our abilities having increased uptime, we'll be able to keep Foetracer's damage bonus active more consistently. Now when using the prismatic version of this build, we would have to use magnetic grenades because there's no option for Vortex. There's also no option for Trapper's Ambush, but we do have Winter's Shroud. This causes a burst of slowing effects to strike all nearby enemies whenever we perform our dodge, and this will trigger the prismatic version of Stylish Executioner. One of the biggest benefits that we have with Prismatic is the option of Acrobat's Dodge, which instantly triggers Radiance. We could also achieve this through the Facet of Dawn, or the Radiant Orbs artifact mod, which would free us up to use our dodge to either reload Choir of 1 or recharge our Snare Bomb. But whenever Radiance is active, we'll give all of our weapons a 25% increase in damage, and this will stack on top of the damage bonus that Foetracers provide. When it comes to our Prismatic Fragments, we're going with Facet of Hope, so that when we have an elemental buff active, like Radiance, we'll gain a 60% increase to the regeneration rate of our class ability. And because of Facet of Purpose, we'll be able to keep a Void Overshield active at almost all times, as we'll be able to generate one every time we collect an orb. It might not be as beneficial as having Devour, but when Void Overshields are active, we'll have a 50% reduction to incoming damage. We're also using Facet of Courage, so after we cause enemies to become slowed, our light-based energies will deal 10% increased damage, and all we've got to do to trigger that is just perform our dodge. We have Facet of Awakening active, which will create elemental pickups after rapidly defeating enemies with either light or darkness-based energies. With how things are set up currently, this will generate Stasis Shards and Void Breaches, giving us increased uptime for our melee and class ability energies. Whenever using the prismatic version of this build, you have the option of sticking with the original Foetracer exotic, or you could dabble your toes into the exotic class items, and if you're lucky enough, you can get the Spirit of Foetracer to pair up with the Spirit of Gerfalcon, and this would work out great with our use of Choir of 1. The Spirit of Foetracers would continue to provide that increased weapon damage, but after we come out of invisibility, the Spirit of Gerfalcon would grant volatile rounds to all of our void weapons, eliminating the need for us to use the Facet of Bravery to be able to trigger volatile rounds. Not that we were using it anyways. This also would prevent you from having to use the Destabilizing Catalyst with the Choir of 1, so that you could stick with the Subsistence Catalyst so that the weapon would partially reload itself after final blows. It's important to know that when using either option of Foetracer on a prismatic build, that our Transcendent Combo Grenade will not trigger Foetracer's damage bonus. Only Void abilities will do that. Our choice in artifact mods will be the same no matter what version of this build that we're using. We've already addressed Void Hegemony and Expanding Abyss, but we're also using Shield Crush, which will give our grenade and melee abilities increased damage and increased regeneration. Whenever we have Radiance active, our grenades will have a 25% increase in damage and their regeneration rate, which is for the most part only going to help us when we're on a prismatic build. And when we have a Void Overshield, we'll get the same deal applied to our Snare Bomb and Trapper's Ambush. With the Choir of 1 technically counting as an auto rifle, we can also use the targeting auto loading and sustained fire mods. This way we'll gain bonus resistance, bonus damage, and automatic reloading of our auto rifles, which does encourage us to use another auto rifle in the kinetic slot. Now that we've touched base on class tree options and artifact mods, let's finish off by talking about our armor and armor mods. The main character stats that you'll want to focus on will be Resilience to reduce incoming damage, Strength to reduce the cooldown of our Snare Bomb, and Mobility to reduce the cooldown of our dodge. Since orbs will provide us with either Devour or Overshields, we are using a Helmet Siphon mod and Reaper class item mod to be able to generate orbs. Orbs will grant us with armor charges, and since the Choir of 1 counts as a special weapon, we can use Special Finisher to keep ourselves loaded up on ammo. Special Finisher will consume 3 armor charges to grant 1 brick of ammo whenever performing a finisher. If we were to also be using a scavenger mod, we would increase how much ammo that these bricks will grant. And by using special ammo finder mods on our helmet, we'll increase how often special ammo drops. With the hipfire mode of this weapon requiring constant reloading, we've also elected to go with a void loader mod, so that we'll have increased reload speed. We could also look at using a void holster mod on our boots, so that when it's stowed, it'll automatically start reloading, but this takes about 4 seconds on every round, so I don't really find it to be all that beneficial. Both the Night Stalker and Prismatic versions of this build provide great ability uptime and will see you inflicting tons of weakening effects onto your enemies, giving you a significant advantage in every engagement. Overall, the Prismatic version does give more damage bonuses because of Facet of Courage and Radiance, but it severely lacks in terms of survivability, which is why I find the Night Stalker build to be a much better option right now, one of the absolute best hunter builds that you could be using, especially if you just got the Choir of One. With that said, that brings us to an end of today's video, but I'd love to hear your thoughts about this Night Stalker build, its Prismatic variant, the Foetracers, and the current state of hunters. Let us know your thoughts down in the comments below. Thank you as always for checking out the video. If you enjoyed and found it helpful, then be sure to hit that like button below, along with the subscribe button if you're new. Both are greatly appreciated, and both really do help support the channel. If you need to make a copy of either of these builds, then be sure to check out my Mobalytics link that's down in the description, where you'll be able to find these and a ton of other great endgame builds. If you're a new Light Guardian just starting your journey, or a battle-hardened veteran just looking for a new place to call home, then be sure to check out the Discord link that's also down in the description and join one of the greatest communities in all of Destiny. And until next time, Guardians, this has been Profane, wishing you all some happy hunting.